Bonjour à tous et bienvenue si vous nous rejoignez
Hello,
pour
everybody.
cette
If you're
première
just
journée
joining
de
us for the
l'Académie
first day of the
virtuelle de la
Academy,
BEI, la Banque européenne d'investissement dédiée aux banques de
we're talking
PME et à
about
la
the
microfinance.
microfinance
Alors, une journée qui
and
a démarré
the
dès
IB in
9 heures
Southern Africa.
GMT ce matin. Le thème de cette Académie virtuelle, je le rappelle, c'est construire un secteur
We're trying
financier
to look
résilient
at
pour les
find a
micro,
regular
petites et moyennes
financial
entreprises
arrangement
dans une
for
croissance
small and
inclusive en Afrique de
micro,
l'Ouest
small,
et du
and
Centre. Alors, merci à vous de nous suivre.
medium-sized
Beaucoup de
companies
questions
in
déjà qui ont
Central
eu lieu,
and
qui sont
West
déroulées
Africa.
tout à l'heure. Il y a encore des
We
sessions à
have.
venir et justement, je vais tout de suite
I'm
enchaîner
going
sur
to
l'introduction de la
talk
session
about
à venir. Il s'agit
the
d'une table ronde
future
sur le financement
session.
justement des
So we're
micro,
talking about
petites et
a
moyennes
table ronde.
entreprises,
So
durant laquelle sera diffusée notamment une vidéo de
we're going to talk
présentation d'une
send a
petite
video
entreprise dans le
from a
secteur
small company
ghanéenne
in
intitulée
Ghana,
Profiche. Profiche qui a été
for
fondée en
fish,
2018 pour promouvoir la sécurité alimentaire en
which
secteur
was
utilise
aided in
les nouvelles
2018.
technologies afin de transformer
We're also
l'industrie
trying to change
de la pêche et
use new
travailler avec les
technologies
acteurs
in order
ghanéens.
to
Je ne vous en dis
work
pas
with.
plus. Je vous laisse donc
So I'm going
suivre cette
to
session grâce
let
notamment à
you
notre
follow this
modérateur aujourd'hui,
session. We
Monsieur
have a
Olivier
moderator,
Edelman, donc chef d'unité
Mr. Edelman.
microfinance de la BEI. Alors je vais l'introduire avant de lui passer la parole. Olivier Edelman dirige
So
l'unité
Olivier
microfinance
Edelman
de la
is going
BEI qui
to
couvre les opérations de microfinance
talk
à
to us
l'extérieur de l'Union
about.
européenne. La BEI, donc basée à Luxembourg, est l'institution de financement à long terme de l'Union européenne, vous le savez. Olivier est responsable
So Olivier
de
looks
l'origination et
after
de
the
l'exécution des
origination
opérations
of
de prise de
operations
participation et de prêts,
for participation
directs ou
and
indirects via des
loans,
fonds,
direct
soutenant
or
donc des
indirect.
micro-entrepreneurs
And we have
et
micro
l'inclusion financière, notamment
entrepreneurs
via des institutions de microfinance. Auparavant, M. Edelman
looking
était
into
responsable de
microfinance.
l'élaboration et de
He
l'exécution
was
des garanties
formerly
de portefeuille en faveur des PME et des entreprises de taille intermédiaire via
he
des
was
intermédiaires
working for
financiers
intermediary
à la BEI
financial
et au Fonds
intermediaries
européen d'investissement.
in the European Fund for
Monsieur Edelman a
Investment.
rejoint le
Mr.
groupe
Edelman
BEI en 2009 après avoir occupé des postes dans différentes banques
has
commerciales
worked
belges,
in
notamment
various
dans le
Belgian
domaine des
particular banks
financements
in
institutionnels.
the
Il est titulaire d'un diplôme en
non-structured
économie de l'Université libre de
round.
Belgique, de
So he is
Bruxelles,
at ULB.
en Belgique. Merci, Monsieur Edelman, de
So
donc prendre le relais. Je vous donne la parole afin de vous
over to
introduire
you
pour les
and
panélistes
tell us
participantes.
about this. Thank you.
Je vous remercie beaucoup, Alan, et donc
So
bonjour
thank
à
you,
toutes et à tous. Et
everyone.
je suis
Olivier
vraiment
Edelman.
ravi d'avoir
I'm
l'opportunité de modérer ce
delighted to
panel
have
aujourd'hui.
the possibility of
Le
talking to
panel
you
dont le
through
titre
this
est Le
panel.
financement des PME dans la
So the
nouvelle
financing
normalité,
of
risques et opportunités.
the risks and opportunities
C'est un sujet
involved.
extrêmement
This is a very
intéressant, extrêmement
extremely
relevant, je pense, pour nous tous.
interesting and difficult subject for us in some ways.
En effet, on aura une vidéo
So
et puis
we will
quelques
have a video which
présentations
is
de
going
nos
to
panélistes qui
and
vont
we have a
regarder
talk through
grosso modo
our
20-30
panelists
minutes
who are
pour
going
un
to
échange de
have some
questions-réponses
exchange of questions and
avec
answers
les
with
participants
the
à ce
participants
panel.
in the panel.
Je suis personnellement très
I
honoré
am
de
personally very
pouvoir modérer
honored
ce panel parce qu'on a
to be
4
joining this panel because we have 4
panélistes de très haut
panelists
niveau
who
avec une
are very high
expérience
level, who
extrêmement
have
intéressante et extrêmement
very
riche.
rich and
Et je suis très
experienced.
intéressé
And I'm very
d'entendre
interested
ce
to
qu'ils auront à
hear
nous dire sur le
what they
sujet
will have to say on the subjects
qui nous fait nous
which
réunir aujourd'hui.
have brought us together
Non
today.
seulement ils ont une expérience riche
Not
et
only do they have
intéressante,
a
mais en
rich and
plus
interesting
elle est très
experience,
diversifiée
but
car nous avons
the experience is
des
very diverse
orateurs qui nous viennent
because we have
tant
observers
de
who
l'Ouest
come
que du
from West
centre
Africa,
que de
from the
l'Est,
Central Africa,
qui représentent
who
divers types
represent
d'institutions,
all sorts of types of
finance, soit de la
institutions,
microfinance ou des PME,
microfinance,
mais aussi des
small and
représentants, ou
medium
en tout cas des orateurs qui
enterprises,
peuvent
and people who is going to
présenter le
talk
point
to
de vue
us,
des
who
PME.
give us their point of
Je
view.
vais
So I'm
inviter
going
nos orateurs à se présenter
to
brièvement,
ask our
en
speakers to
commençant
present
par
themselves
Monsieur
briefly.
Polycarpe
So
Igaté.
first of all, we have Mr. Migarté, Polycarpe, Monsieur Polycarpe.
Monsieur Polycarpe Igaté, si vous voulez bien vous présenter
If you would like to
20
say a few
secondes,
words
ça serait très
about
bien.
yourself, thank you. Chief Commercial Officer.
From Nairobi, my name is Polycarp Igathe. I serve as Chief Commercial Officer of Equity Group Holdings. We're a leading bank entity serving 7 countries in the Eastern African region with headquarters in Nairobi. I have 25 years of experience, majorly in fast-moving consumer goods industry, and 15 of them as Chief Executive Officer running different fast-moving consumer goods entities that straddle Coca-Cola, the breweries, Tiger Brands, and Shell, and Vivo Energy. and now I serve as the Chief Commercial Officer at Equity Bank Holdings in Kenya, and it's a real pleasure. I'm a student of economics and finance out of the University of Nairobi, and it's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur Igaté. Je vais maintenant demander à monsieur Philippe Sigwart.
I'm going to ask Monsieur Philippe Sigwart to present himself next. So I'm delighted. So I'm Philippe Sigwart. I am the CEO of Baobab Group, which was formerly Group Microcred, was of the actors, traditional actors in the microfinance. So 2005. So I've been with Baobab for 2 years. I've worked in this sector, the microfinance and financial sector, for about 20 years, maybe slightly more, and I started my career in the European Bank for Reconstruction in Eastern Europe. Then I moved into, so before joining the group, I worked with Polycap, and I was in charge for the small to medium enterprises. So I've worked on various continents, and for 2 years, I've been CEO of Baobab Group.
Alors, Madame Eliane Munkeni-Kiakie, si vous voulez bien vous présenter brièvement
Okay, so
également.
now Eliane Munkeni, Vice President.
Je réponds au nom d'Eliane Munkeni-Kiakie.
So bonjour, je m'appelle Eliane Munkeni. Je vais try and make a presentation of what I'm doing.
Je suis expert comptable.
So I am a chartered accountant, and I have my own company, and I created an initiative. And from this company, I've been able to talk about financing of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. So I'm Vice President nationally and President of the Fonds d'investissement. And I have, I'm looking after women's questions for this and training. So I'm training trainers, and also going to look into companies, starting with a project. Then I help them find financing relatively to this project, which they will want to undertake. So I'm president of a group and administrator in a bank as well. So thank you for this presentation. To finance, Idrissa Diabira, if you'd like to present yourselves briefly. So thank you very much, and hello everyone. So I'm Idrissa Diabira, CEO of DMP, which is a development company, an institution which was to help the development of companies, so training, reinforcing knowledge. I'm an engineer in informatics by training. I have also the ability to work in various groups and companies on the IT side, in designing and putting in IT systems. So we have so we've had cooperation between France and my country. We also have tried to structure for the emerging Senegal, and we have to try and give support to small and medium-sized companies. And this is what we're trying to do, to try and get credits for their projects. Thank you. Thank you very much for this short presentation. I would suggest that we should start. So we're talking about the new normality and the new normal and the financing of small and medium companies. I have a lot of interest. You all have a lot of interest in this area. So we also want to talk about the financial institutions. So the impact of COVID has had a very great effect on financial institutions, which has had to cope with very quick change to respond to the needs of our clients. We had people who were unable to contact their lenders, so we had to adapt the ways in which we have interactions with our clients. We have also have a role with digitalization, but that's not the answer to everything, of course. So in this context, the financial institutions have had to restructure their financial processes in order to find solutions in order to continue with the financing of their countries. So there been a crisis in liquidity as well. After 18 months at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, a lot of these financial institutions have needed to do the necessary in order to cope, particularly in Africa up until today. However, 90% of the companies are small and medium ones in Bangladesh, and 70% of the workers were affected by the crisis, the pandemic. And a lot of them are in debt to their lenders. The effects of the pandemic threw a lot of companies into a negative spiral of debt. So we needed to find quick solutions, rapid solutions to bring this back on track. Financial institutions now have to look after clients who are in debt. And we're also trying to continue to finance some other companies. We've not had a liquidity problem until now, but this probably will affect the financial capacity of the microfinancing and from the banks. This will have a negative effect on the provision of credit. We have a need. We have to help when the upturn occurs. We still need to help our companies. So we need to be able to deal with PMEs, to increase, to accept risk. So we want to try and draw some lessons from the on financial institutions, but also on the small and medium companies, so that PME could continue to benefit from these financings. As I said at the beginning of the panel, we have speakers who come from different regions. We have speakers who are going to speak about from the point of view of the financial institutions, they're going to tell us how their financial institutions organize themselves to adapt themselves to the needs of their crews. And we want to see how they're going to tackle this new normal and how they cope with digitalization in order to cope with this new normal. So again, what's the financial impact on these countries? And for this, for our panel, we're going to have a view which is going to talk with us to PME and SME, to see how it's going to adapt itself to this new situation. What are the lessons are we going to draw from all this? so that the SMEs and what can they in turn offer us in the financial institutions in the way of lessons. And these are all questions which I hope that we will be able to deal with today during this panel. Before continuing further with our panelists, I think that we are going to look at see a video which is about fishermen in Ghana.
I am Liman Otete Apeku, a co-founder and business development lead in Ghana. Due to COVID, most of our bulk clients had to close down their restaurants and then their catering services. So our revenue just came down very sharply. But then we had a spike, and this is a good story. We had a spike in our retail sales. We really need a huge amount of money to be able to manage an inventory level where we can have some stock level maintained in the supermarket. But we need some amount of investment to be able to improve upon our code logistics management. Like we have different growth stages of every company. So then we should have different means by which companies should be assessed or certain requirements should be demanded from certain companies at certain levels.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Donc, c'était une vidéo, je trouve, très intéressante.
Right, many thanks. I think that it was a very interesting video that illustrates and introduces our purpose today, and I will straight away go to our panelists, and I will give them the floor for them to deal with the issues that we have just talked about. And we'll start, first of all, with Mr. Egate. Mr. Egate, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Olivier, and thanks a lot for having me in this panel. I hope I'm loud and clear. I'm very happy to talk about our journey as a group in really helping SMEs and walk through the adaptation to COVID-19, meet the expectations that they have of financial institutions, and basically speaks briefly about what financial institutions have done to adapt to the new reality of small medium enterprises. Just very quickly as an intro, Equity Group has 15 million customers. They straddle the DRC. We are present in Rwanda. We are present in Uganda. We are present in Tanzania, in Southern Sudan. We have a representative office now in Ethiopia, and we are headquartered in Kenya, and we also have an office and an operation in Tanzania. Out of that 15 million, 98%, 95% of our customers are small, medium enterprises. And that reflects the structure of our economy, where 98% of the businesses are really SMEs who account for 80% of the jobs we have in our economy, and a very massive part of GDP, well above 40% in the regions that we operate. And clearly the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 on SMEs, especially in the sectors of education, because we had a lot of small, medium enterprises that were helping with education. Many were helping with health. Those ones survived. Education was decimated, as you can imagine. Tourism was affected. What we have seen survive is actually food and agriculture and trade. As a group, we had to almost accommodate close to 170 million US dollars in moratoriums, and we give a lot of moratoriums for interest payments and moratoriums for principal payments in working through with SMEs. And what we have found, especially coming into the second year of SMEs, we gave moratoriums that were beyond 1 year, because the level when COVID hit in January of 2020, we effected the moratoriums from April of last year. And we have seen over 80% of what we call our COVID-19 book bounce back after the vaccination programs have started, because majority of the small medium enterprises basically play to the biggest needs of the household, which is the kitchen and the bathroom, and consumption really. That's where those are the sanctuaries of consumption in the house, and we've seen them bounce back very strongly. We have a real belief that small medium enterprises are the vessels and channels of innovation in an economy, economic inclusion, diversification, and growth. So for us, the COVID-19, speaking to the COVID-19, we've seen a lot of adaptation from SMEs. Many people used the chance of the moratorium to really change their business models. So you found somebody who was in logistics or in school, transforming their school from a school to a different kind of business. Many innovated new business models. Many created fresh linkages to survive, and many put the moratorium money rather than spend it. The moratorium money, especially in food and agriculture, went into building capacity to then do local value addition in the farm. We saw very many small, medium enterprise, SME farms of people in the food and agricultural value chain, for instance, take that money and create silos for holding grain. And this has even enabled them come out of the COVID situation much stronger than they went. But of course, the biggest challenge that SMEs face is what they face around the world. It remains the challenge of taxation. They primarily want to remain very informal over time. The challenge of licensing and certification of product quality, and really the challenge of innovation. And we as a bank have therefore moved ahead and curated very interesting solutions. Our solutioning is really based on listening to these customers. We have in the bank a culture where everybody adopts a branch, including headquarters staff. And we spend a lot more time with our customers, listening to them and speaking to them. And what we have seen is, and our results, because we're a publicly quoted company on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, you'll start to see that we're really enjoying double-digit top-line growth, really driven by more customer traffic. Well, we serve customers through 4 channels, mainly mobile, internet, which really absolutely took off. We serve customers through our agency channel, which is our third-party channel that does cash in, cash out, and through the traditional branch. And the services that we've seen, especially SMEs come for, is really, we primarily give 4 services. They come to us for a solution in moving money in real time. They come for solutions to insure money. They come for solutions to save money and invest it, and solutions to borrow money, basically. But credit and movement of money, the borrowing and moving money is really where the largest bit sits. So we have gone through what we have an approach in the bank, which we call the ecosystem approach, which strongly, it's a conceptual model that says the micro, small, medium enterprise exists to serve the household. And the micro, small, medium enterprise is then sandwiched by corporates and government. So it is the biggest transmitter of consumption volumes to the market. So speaking to what the moderator spoke about COVID-19, we've come out, we even think we took a lot of provisions, and we are therefore seeing, we have been surprised that the bounce back has been better than expected. Across the region, we've seen SMEs bounce back to pre-COVID levels, and the performance going very well. Well, SME's largest expectation of the financial institution, and it's underrated, is primarily educating them on business literacy. Many of them consider us the source of business literacy. Many of these people don't care for the degrees. We have group lending where we give people access to credit without any collateral. We have a very large book there where we use social collateral and self-guarantee, especially amongst women and youth, to access credit. And we've seen that they have a real expectation going forward of cash flow lending. And therein lies the challenge, because regulation tends to, and prudential guidelines from deposit-taking institutions tends to prefer us to take collateral. And so we are moving towards data and technology to enable us do credit scoring. We've already done credit scoring for over 10 million of these customers, and then giving them standby limits so that they self-serve, they self-onboard, they self-transact, and they so that self-serve is also a massive expectation of SME in terms of experiences, and therefore stability of data, stability of technology, stability of tech channels is key to them, and also the ability to also be able to be very close to them to serve them with branches. So as many people are closing branches, we are continuing to open a lot more branches to be able to serve these institutions. And also, we are also adapting to the new reality that old banking products don't work for SMEs. So we've gone to, for instance, working capital lending through ecosystems is anchored on two things: very strong relationships that are founded on education and training, but also curating solutions like load for load financing for traders. You're importing containers through a port. We actually finance your needs in terms of container by container and charging you fees and commissions as opposed to the old way of looking at effective interest rates over 1 year. So tech data has become a really great friend of ours. And to close my introduction is to say, we as banking institutions have to remember, SMEs wake up to deal with the 4 core challenges which our people face, which is hunger, ignorance, health, disease, and disease. So these big thematic areas is really what they want us to address. And in addition to that, we've also gotten a lot of partnership through the European Investment Bank, which we call Team Europe. And we have a lot of credit guarantees that have made us calibrate the right appetite to be able to lend to them. So our appetite for lending is improving, as you've heard, opening up new credit limits to them through a digital platform, and also bringing other partners in addition to the tier 2 funding that's coming out of partners who can give us credit guarantees. We've also brought in the MasterCard Foundation, people like that who we are working with. But primarily, our interest is in SMEs who are in the real economy. The real economy being where daily, everyday consumption is taking place, and ensuring that we meet the expectation of being relevant to them every day. You cannot achieve relevance if you're not salient in helping them move money. And you see their ins and outs, and then you use that data set to then credit score them and make sure that you're lending also, you're connecting them and fusing their connection with corporate and their connection with household, giving liquidity to the household so you're driving their top line, giving liquidity to them so they can buy to the corporate. And that approach is starting to show very strong green shoots of success, and that has made us the fastest growing bank in the region, in Eastern African region. Thank you very much, Olivier. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you
very much for this very interesting presentation. I took many notes, but I would say essentially that, and paradoxically maybe, regarding the fact that the COVID crisis pushed us all to be further away from one another, but yet what I hear from yourself is that you're trying to get closer to your customers and your clients, to be closer to them, to understand them better, and also to adapt your products and processes when you're talking about scoring and the use of data in order to better serve your clients. That's what I would remember from your intervention, and I think that's very interesting, and maybe this will be some elements that we can reflect on during the next few moments. Before giving the floor to Philippe Sigwart, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention to start with, but you can vote. Let me remind you, you can vote for the survey that you will find on the corner of the window and answer a few poll questions on our topics of today. So now I'm offering to give the floor to Mr. Sigwart, who represents not banking group, but a microfinance group that we know very well at.
La parole est à vous, Monsieur Sigwart.
and such as we know with equity. Mr. Seguarte, you have the floor. Yes, many thanks. To me, it's very difficult to speak after the intervention by Polycart, who represents the equity group. I know that group very well, having worked in that group. This is really a giant of the financial services on the African continent, whilst as for ourselves, as the Baobab Group, we're very, very small in a way. As you have underlined, this is a microfinance group, and microfinance in its most classical sense. So, in order to present the Baobab Group in a few words, we are present on a big part of the African continent, in 8 countries in total, principally in Western Africa, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Mali, Burkina Faso, but also in Central Africa, in the DRC, and also in other countries where we are present on the African continent, or Madagascar, Nigeria, and Tunisia. Today, I will speak mostly about the activities in Western Africa, and also I will mention a little what we do in Congo. In total, we disburse each year for the equivalent of more or less 1 billion euros in microcredits. So in the microfinance sector, we are quite a sizable entity. We're talking about very small credits, but as there are very many of them, this leads to some quite significant amounts. So each month, we reach roughly 1 million euros in payments, which is quite a sum. And I think that we have a real contribution for entrepreneurs throughout the continent. We have roughly 1 million clients in the different countries in which we operate. So what we do is we are really traditional microfinance with really small amounts, amounts that go from 300 to 400 euros, and medium-sized loan, it's about 3,000 euros. So we're talking about small amounts. We're talking about local traders, but also in the agricultural sector, in small production, and the service sector with small restaurants and so forth. So, what happened when the COVID crisis started is that, to start with, we were all shocked at Baobab because we could not really see it coming quickly. We knew something was happening, but yet this became quite extraordinary at the beginning of the crisis. As Mr. Olivier Edelman has underlined at the beginning, our main concern was liquidity. It was a worry to start with, but yet we did not see that coming because we were expecting for people to retrieve their money, which was not the case at all, which means that we did not have a liquidity crisis. In fact, savers added to their savings, which was very reassuring. In the meantime, what we saw was that we had to be much more conservative in terms of disbursements because the economic activity almost came to a standstill in some countries. And what we saw is that the response from some governments was quite varied depending on the countries. Some countries were less impacted than others. Some were impacted more strongly. So, for example, we saw in the DRC that the impact was not too big, whilst in Tunisia, we have to say that it was a catastrophe. Now, in Western Africa, as for the COVID crisis, with the exception of Senegal, where this had a stronger impact, especially at the beginning of this year, but yet it went pretty well as a whole. So to start with, we focused on being as close to our clients as possible, listening to them as much as possible, offering some moratoriums, some delayed payments in some situations, and also keeping on giving support to our clients because they needed this support because they really needed some working capital, even during the COVID crisis. The COVID crisis never stopped. That's the reality. Even during the COVID crisis, people in the populations didn't need to eat, etc. So this is as most entrepreneurs or micro-entrepreneurs involved in the trade sector, the activity was maintained quite well, apart from some cases where there were some strict lockdowns. So when you had strict lockdowns, it was more problematic, and in that case, our reaction was to offer some delayed repayments, moratoriums, and also we reviewed the interest rates downwards in some cases. Of course, we dealt with this with IT systems, where we adapted our IT systems, and we're also using our data quite a lot in order to analyze the behavior of our employees in order to better measure the risk and so forth. So, as a result, we have seen the peak of the COVID crisis more or less in the middle of last year, where in July, more or less, where we saw the peak of that crisis, where we saw about a third of our credit portfolio, which had been postponed. But yet the evolution was very positive afterwards. So we have also seen lack of growth in the beginning of the year, but yet a proper recovery in the second half of the year. And in terms of the quality of the portfolio, it was maintained quite well. And now we have come back to some indicators that are quite similar to what we had before the COVID crisis, with a good portfolio quality, and also the postponed payments worked well with clients through we started our activities, good growth of the portfolio, and also disbursement started well again, and we are back to what the levels we had roughly in 2019. So this was really positive as a whole. Aside from that, the important points and lessons learned during this crisis is of course, with using technology, we can remain as close as possible to our clients. It's also possible to remain in contact with the employees, agencies, and so forth. So what we did regularly is that even as far as our headquarters are concerned, far away from the agencies, we had some roundtable meetings with the employees, the heads of agencies, and so forth, in order to be in regular contact with the teams on the ground. So being as close as possible to the teams by using technology, being in contact also with clients. And we have also used technology in order to improve everything that were means of payments, etc., that were not very well developed in the Baobab group before the integrations with the suppliers from Global Money, etc., in order to also facilitate the disbursements and the reimbursements for the clients. So, as a whole, we managed very well, and we can see that in most countries, the COVID crisis, we can say that we are coming out of it. We can also say clearly that we can finally see some light at the end of the tunnel. So in most countries, the evolution is pretty positive. So we are trusting that the future will be good. There is a strong demand, there is a recovery, but yet we now have to be present and to be listening to our clients. So our specialty, which is especially with microcredits, which are credits in order to deal with working capital, which are not secure with collaterals in part. So we're here to support the entrepreneurs and to help them to fill their stocks when they need some financing in order to finance their trading activities and so forth. So, to conclude, I would say that this was a difficult period, but we worked hard, we worked as a team, we were always listening to our clients and customers, and we managed very well. Many thanks.
Merci beaucoup pour votre intervention.
Thank you very much for this talk. I'm noting something between the two presentations. There's some optimism about our future.
Et en même temps, l'importance du support technologique pour rester proche des clients. Et la
technical support so that we keep up to date with our clients. Both of you noted this in your presentation. So I'm going to give the point of view of a couple of SMEs, which will be interesting to compare with what we've had so far. So, Eliane Munkin, if you would like to talk to us, please.
Merci beaucoup,
So
monsieur.
thank you,
Je suis en
sir.
train de suivre avec
I'm following with great interest.
ma diapositive. Il faut que le service technique, je vous demanderai de ne pas trop
okay,
vous
so there
déranger.
we are. I've
Parce
got
que là,
my
je suis en train de suivre
picture.
moi-même. Ça va, c'est bon.
I'm
Et
doing
donc
some
là, déjà, je commencerai par
advertising, some publicity.
remercier les intervenants
So thank you very much
qui
to the
ont
speakers,
précédents, je vais dire, Monsieur
the
Polycarpe
former
et Monsieur
speakers.
du groupe Baobab. Surtout, Monsieur du groupe Baobab, j'aimerais avoir vos coordonnées parce
I'd like
que
to have
vous deux, vous avez fait
talk
une
particularly about
présentation
Baobab because you've done some
surtout
presentations
en
for
termes
us
de crédit
in
et la
terms of the
situation
credits
en
and the
RDC,
situation.
et je suis
And I
d'accord
am
avec vous à 80%.
I'm
Et j'aimerais avoir les coordonnées de
80% happy with what
pour
you've said.
m'entretenir avec lui parce qu'il a dit des
And
choses
I'm
et j'aimerais
going
bien
to have a chat
vérifier les
with him
profils.
because
Et donc de
he
là, je fais
is
le pont concernant ma
says very interesting
présentation.
things.
Moi,
Hey,
j'aimerais
as regards my
plutôt
presentation,
parler
I would like
de
to
la
talk
situation des
about the situation
micro-entreprises
of
en RDC
micro
et je pense que je
enterprises,
suis
and I think that I am
bien placée
well
à vous
placed
dire, à vous
to tell you
parler
and to talk to you
de
about
ce que ces PME-là vivent en matière de
what's
crédit.
happening in
Lorsque
regards to
les
credit.
deux intervenants parlent,
When the two last
messieurs
speakers
qui
talk
disent
about
qu'ils sont proches de leurs clients,
of
moi
institutions
j'aimerais
which
bien
are close to
savoir
their
aujourd'hui en RDC
clients,
comment.
I would like
Avant,
this to be the case because
c'était une banque de proximité.
so
Et sincèrement, moi,
we used to have a local bank, and the approach was micro, and we could live with this. But today, I know the reps here. We've had work together, but I'd like to know what their policy. So it's an indirect question which I'm trying to get the answer to. So listening to my colleagues, the former speaker, there's a demand which is increasing every day from micro enterprises. I used to have 5, 10, 15, but this is increased. From another side, we have banks, we have credits, and the banks with the classic conditions to award credits. And we also had microfinance companies may really making an effort to satisfy this need. But the demand is increasing. And so these micro companies, micro investors also need resources as well. Therefore, they are not able to satisfy the demand which is coming through from the microfinances. So the federations, the associations, and the other entities which are trying to lend their support to the small and medium enterprises, the micros. What are they going to do? I must reinforce this question. I know how things go, and I was also in the management company of a microfinance company. So certain banks and certain microfinance companies have a surplus. And they're telling us we have money, but we don't know how to give credits because this category of people doesn't really answer our. However, these micro companies do need money, so we ask ourselves, as regards this, what's the justification that I'm hearing? So the micro companies, the SMEs are saying we didn't have enough liquidity. And even if we had this liquidity, And if we're talking about bail bubbles, also there are conditions imposed upon us. So the medium-sized companies can possibly manage these conditions, but the micro companies can deal with this. So the problem subsists. So if the EMS do not have sufficient resources, they also have conditions that they ways to get reimbursement of their money. So financial companies for development. Sometimes you get subsidies, but not credits. Credits are less often. So on the bank side of banks, the conditions remain not unchanged. But we are told we're not able to go into the detail for micro companies, but we're in a rather rough place. So there's no guarantees, really. No collateral companies. However, we have had to so promotion funds, we've had subsidies, but not really credits. So I'm happy with you, to agree with you. Gap is the word which says gap. The gap is getting larger and larger. I would say that at a particular time, so the liquidity and the credits available. The situation in Baobab is the effect on the micro enterprises. They're still in the same situation. There are guarantees. There's no collateral asked for. They're not able to give us guarantees. And every time a government wants to talk about the problem of the micro companies, there is this difficulty in getting guarantees. So that's my attitude as regards this problem, this paradox, regarding the financing of the SMEs. Well, we don't have anything to draw on. There's a triangle with some of the partners. Some of the stakeholders do need to get themselves together to talk about and deal with these micro enterprises. So the development agencies, again, this is a separate group, the federations, associations, so the micro enterprises need to get together. Why? Because the micros are told that they don't have correct financial accounting, so they need training in management. We need to go through each element of the micro enterprise, analyze it, and each stakeholder should undertake to take responsibility for the weaknesses which we identify in the micro companies. So for the development companies and these other associations, we need to engage with the SMEs. So actors in the micro sector, we are asking for innovation. We're asking for innovation in this, for this category, because I have the impression
Malheureusement, les IMF ne peuvent pas trop bouger parce qu'ils ont peur de la réaction de la Banque centrale. Quand il va contrôler, il y aura des conséquences. Donc, je viens du côté les acteurs du financement, donc les banques commerciales. Je pense que les banques commerciales, surtout, il est temps de changer, de travailler ou de revoir un peu certains textes réglementaires. Parce que ces textes, pour la plupart, datent des années avant même qu'on parle aujourd'hui des paiements électroniques ou monnaie électronique. Et donc, electronic banking or things like that. Et à l'époque, ces textes, lorsque cela a été écrit, il n'y avait pas
when these regulations were set up, there was not so much demand.
Le concept d'autonomisation de la femme à l'époque n'était pas
talking about
aussi
empowerment of women
développé.
at stage,
les jeunes n'étaient pas aussi portés vers la création de l'entreprise. Et donc, les textes avaient été faits pour une catégorie donnée. Donc, aujourd'hui, la demande est importante. Je pense que le banque commercial doivent revoir les textes, évidemment, en collaboration avec la Banque centrale, parce qu'ils ne peuvent pas décider d'eux-mêmes de changer les textes du jour au lendemain. Et les gouvernements, doivent aussi s'y mettre. Parce que si le gouvernement ne s'y met pas,
and the government also has its part to play here, because otherwise,
lorsque j'interroge
when I talk
les banquiers, ils disent non. Dernièrement, j'étais au fonds de promotion de l'industrie pour défendre les dossiers de certains microfinances.
promote microfinances.
Madame, vous avez raison, mais nos textes datent des années. Vraiment, j'ai même honte de vous parler de l'année.
I am rather scared to talk to you about this, so I can't give credits from one day to the next.
Les textes ne changent pas. Parce que lui aussi, quand il sera contrôlé, on l'accusera de ne pas l'avoir, de ne pas avoir respecté le texte.
I will be accused of not having respected the rules.
En fonds propres, aujourd'hui, il y a de plus en plus de sociétés de financement
so
qui
today we have more and more financing
et
companies
qui disent, voilà, on va prendre part, mais la condition, laissez-nous gérer l'entreprise. Lorsque nous allons gérer l'entreprise, nous allons pouvoir accompagner, donner, accroître le fonds propre. Eux, ils apportent le fonds propre, mais ils gèrent jusqu'à obtenir le retour du capital.
Trying to obviously to get the refund of their capital.
Qui peut aider les micro-entreprises parce qu'ils
So,
n'auront
in order to help micro
la
enterprises,
garantie, ça sera vraiment difficile.
it is very, very difficult to get the necessary guarantees.
Moi, c'est une des solutions. Et
That's probably one of the solutions available.
Comme je dirais, les qui interviennent en termes de garantie. Donc, si vous regardez dans plusieurs pays, je crois qu'au Sénégal, si ma mémoire est bonne, je crois que de plus en plus, il y a des sociétés qui apportent le fonds des garanties pour le crédit des PME. À ce moment-là,
have had credits, give credits to SMEs.
Les PME ne doivent pas rembourser les crédits. Non, il va rembourser les crédits, mais au moins
credits do not need to be reimbursed.
Qui apportent, lorsqu'il y a un fonds de garantie donné par l'État ou
But if the state is giving
institution
guarantees,
financière, ça permet de réduire
this
au moins le
allows
risque
to reduce the risk
de la personne
of defaulting.
qui octroie les crédits. Donc, pour terminer, moi, je dirais
To finish,
il faut
I would say,
qu'on signe une charte des
we
micro, petites et
really
moyennes
should have a
entreprises.
charter.
Et dans ces chartes-là, qui va signer? Donc, d'abord, les acteurs que je viens de signer, le gouvernement, la banque centrale, la banque commerciale, les IMF, les sociétés qui apportent d'investissement,
SMEs,
ou ceux
and the
qui
companies
apportent de fonds de
who
garantie et
provide guarantee
ceux qui
funding,
encadrent de PME,
all these
doivent
actors
se mettre d'accord
good
pour
to
signer
make
la
an
charte.
agreement
Et ensuite, si tout le monde s'y met,
on how
je
to
pense
proceed, and
qu'on
everybody
pourra
would join in
trouver
with this.
une solution et mieux
We would have
accompagner les PME.
a
Je
better
vous
solution
remercie.
which is adapted to SMEs. much better adapted
Je vous
to
remercie beaucoup
SMEs.
pour cette intervention très engagée et très intéressante.
Thank you very much for this presentation,
par rapport à
which
ce que
was
nous
very
avons
engaged
entendu
with what was
précédemment.
said and
Je
throws
note
up
en
contrast with what
particulier
we've
votre
heard.
conclusion
So
et l'appel que vous lancez. Et je pense
the
que
appeal which you're
ce qu'il
launching
signifie avant tout, c'est qu'il
is
s'agit d'un
for
effort commun qui
a
requiert
common effort
l'intervention de tout un
which
certain
would
nombre d'acteurs
bring together a
pour que
certain
le
number of
gap que vous
actors
mentionnez puisse être
so
corrigé.
that
Et qu'en effet,
the
ces solutions
difficulties be
individuelles et uniques
resolved.
ne seront pas suffisantes. Il faudra un nombre d'acteurs qui
So we
travaillent
need
en
a
commun
number of actors who
pour
are
apporter
working together, who are
une
concerted
réponse au
together
problème
to
de l'accès
find
au financement en Afrique et
who can talk to each
je
other
pense que
about the problems
c'est
of microfinancing
si je ne
in
travestis pas vos
Africa
mots, ce que
and
vous vouliez
elsewhere.
faire passer comme message.
That's a very good message for you to be sending through.
Et sur
I'm
ce
very
fait,
happy for this.
je me permets de donner la
I'm
parole à
going to
Monsieur
ask
Idrissa Diabira qui peut-être pourra
Idrissa
compléter
Diabira,
vos paroles et
who
donner aussi
maybe
une
might
perspective un peu
echo
différente à la question. Monsieur
what you've
Diabira,
said.
je
Monsieur
vous
Diabira,
propose de prendre la parole immédiatement.
why do you not talk to us, please?
Merci beaucoup.
Many thanks.
Pour faire suite effectivement à
To
Eliane,
follow on Eliane,
parce que j'ai aidé à mettre en place au Sénégal
because I've helped to implement in Senegal the Fonds VINC, which is a fund guaranteeing the priority investments and to cover the risk. This is part of the response, one of the response to reducing risks, where we would have the possibility to facilitate financing access to the small and medium enterprises, as for others also too. And we will be able to come back onto that. But the element that to me is the most substantial element regarding the difficulty of small and medium enterprises to access financing, of course, is the question of risk, and it is the way in which we are in a measure to apprehend risk and also to share this and to mitigate this. So, the aim of the few slides I will show you is to come back on what seems to be a structural response to the financing of small and medium enterprises, especially regarding COVID, which is scoring, and especially for us the capacity to score on a universal basis. And this is due to the accompanying structures of small and medium enterprises, especially so that this could constitute a bridge, in particular with some financial institutions. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll come back very quickly on the reason why we have such a positioning on risks. Because when we carry out some trainings, when we do some trainings, I establish some parallels with some enterprises leaders and with their families, and also with their sister or daughter, by asking the question, whom amongst them would be able to land, as in Western Africa, we do not give the daughter's hand for marriage. We land the person in a way, we entrust that person to a person that we would not know anything about in terms of their origin, about what they belong to, their address, their on a life journey. Of course, everybody would say that's impossible. Nobody will entrust their daughter or sister to somebody, to a perfect stranger. So therefore, establish a parallel with some financial resource of the financial institutions by stating that it's the same thing. It's almost impossible to be able to entrust some resources to somebody where we do not know where they reside, we do not know the history, we do not know the parents, we do not know the journey, and yet in Senegal you have some companies, as you can see on the left of your screen, where 81% of enterprises have less than 60 million CFA francs as turnover, which is for 8% of the turnover of the whole companies, but you have 0.2% who have more than 2 billion CFA turnover and represent 70% of the whole of these enterprises in Senegal, of which we number 408,000 enterprises. Out of them, only 3% have balance sheets and a financial identity or some elements that means that we can have some visibility about them. So, and we'll come back on this, when we zoomed on COVID-19 by carrying out some inquiry by approaching 830 enterprises on the whole of the sector with all sizes, where part was accompanied, part has some accounting method in place, even if it's not properly developed. That's what characterizes informal enterprises. And one was the question, in terms of bank accounts, 90% of them had a bank account with a bank or with a financial institution. And regarding COVID, when we asked the question, have you approached your financial institution in order to face the crisis that we faced last year? 70% said no. They did not approach such a bank or financial institution. But amongst those who have solicited, 82% had a negative reply to their request or to what the financial institution could provide. Aside from this, 3 out of 4 companies almost indicated that they did not know the mechanisms set up by the states, by the banks, by the financial institutions in order to face the crisis, and 94% of these enterprises indicated that it would be useful to be accompanied in order to be able to have access to the different mechanisms. So, this is what once again leads us to the question of information, trust, and also to what is presented by the financial institutions or establishments such as Equity Baobab or others, when we ask them what is the main element that prevents you from financing and develop the small and medium enterprise. In Senegal, we had some consultations in 2003 and 2010 on microcredits, and BCAO focused on these questions, and the European Investment Bank also. And what appears straight away in a symmetrical manner with some enterprises who do not have any bank statements, the weak quality of information on small and medium enterprises. And this is way before the lack of management, governance, or the legal framework, or the high rate in the sector, or even the guarantee mechanism that intervenes at for 68%. So the main priority is to be sure that people could understand and adjust their understanding of the enterprises so that this risk could be taken into account under different forms. With microfinance 20, 30 years ago, this seems quasi impossible, and it has adjusted the way to approach its clients differently. And so, to conclude with that, my presentation, the DPME, which is an accompanying structure, a business development services, has developed an accompanying and supporting model by instituting or by placing at the heart of its endeavor management in charge of risk and intermediation, in which we have a unit dealing with scoring and support and observation. That unit is involved in the dual process of certification, ISO 2001 and ISO 2701 on the security and safety of the information systems for the certifications that we want to obtain last of June and during this month of September. Why? Well, to be able to give some modalities to appreciate the enterprise and the eligibility of that enterprise for different mechanisms, whether they are external, with banks, investment funds, microfinance institutions, to be eligible to some markets, which is oftentimes the first level, or the eligibility to some assistance program, technical assistance program. So this element to us seems to be quite indispensable in order to multiply the possibilities to have an understanding between the small and medium enterprises and the different stakeholders, whatever their forms of support are being used. Because at the end of the day, if the risk is not covered and not taken into account, whether at the central bank level or at the financial institutions level, the problem will remain as a whole in the incapacity to reuse some and reinject some resources. So, with the COVID, despite the mechanisms that we have set up and the reorientation of some particular refinancing instruments with our partners, we have also deployed a path that is aimed at broadening the scoring capacity, informalizing the stakeholders, so that as we support them and accompany them whilst people are in difficulties, we can give them some support and also give them a message or a scoring for common understanding in order to get access to different resources which are financial resources. So this is roughly the message that I wanted to convey to you regarding the trust and the need in that support to build and develop these elements of a common language between institutions, accompaniment, support, and the small and medium enterprises, whether we're talking about financial nature of them or not. Many thanks. Many thanks for this very interesting presentation. I think that this also gives us a complementary angle to what had been said precedently on a very particular point, which is about reducing access to financing, which is the lack of information that will enable that trust to be created, as you have rightly stated, between the lenders and the borrowers, and the scoring could be a tool enabling to bring a solution to this problem, or in part a solution which will of course necessitate the participation once again of a number of stakeholders, but yet it could be part of the key to the solution for this problem of access to financing. It's a very interesting program. I wish you good luck. It's certainly very important. So we are very late on our agenda. I think that you all had many very interesting things to say. We have about 5 to 6 minutes left in order to go to the question and answer sessions. I have noted a few questions that I saw coming our way. I will try to sum them up quickly, and I will ask each speaker to reply very quickly in 30 seconds maximum. So we had a question which was regarding the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it is linked with the Congolese legislation, and I think I will ask Mrs. Nkeke to answer that question. More precisely, the question is regarding the obtention of land certificates, which is a challenge, as without these certificates, entrepreneurs do not have any guarantee to present to their bank, which represents a challenge for them. So I think that, and I don't know whether you'd agree with that point, but this goes towards what you were stating, which is that there are a number of barriers to access finance linked to the banking industry, but also to the legislation that can be supporting the sector or not. Do you have a few words to say for that question? Yes, I understand that question clearly, and when we ask, at least in the DRC in general, when we ask about credit and we ask for collateral, in general, we're talking about the land title. That's what we're asking for. And therefore, the problem is that it takes some time. Sometimes it takes a long time, and now more and more prices rise. Well, we're paying $100 now. You can be asked $500 and $1,000. So when I come back onto our category that imports us today, micro, these people don't necessarily have $100 in their pocket to get the land title, which then becomes a problem. But I know that some financial institutions, some international monetary funds sometimes ask some television or a car or other elements, for example, as a collateral when you're asking for a credit for 100, 200, less than $500. Oftentimes, we ask for a collateral that is represented by goods rather than by a land title. But it's a problem that needs to be solved with the minister in charge of the land registry. Many thanks. Many thanks for this answer. Right, I see another question that I will now address to Mr. Igate. It's regarding trade finance for the small and medium enterprises. And the question, I think, goes towards your intervention when you mentioned numerization, digitalization, and the use of data that could support this kind of activities. Do you have any information to provide us on that matter, how to use the data in order to support financing and trade finance for the small and medium enterprises? I can read you that question in English if you want.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that question. Yes, indeed. The application of global digital data standards is critical and has already started. So could not agree with you more that legal entity identifiers, which is a globally recognized standard for business identification, that's the way to go. And we've already started to curate that by enabling small medium enterprises to basically transact between digital wallets and real bank wallets without any cost. We've done that innovation behind the telecom. We've done an innovation behind the in Equity Bank, behind the telecom pay bill, what they call a telecom pay bill for merchants. And the pay bill and the telephone number is increasingly become the alias to your bank account. And with that, we are able to see the ins and outs of your money. So what the banker struggled to see a long time ago in terms of cash flows, because people saved in one bank, borrowed in another, and transacted in another. So they had, almost banking for them was a triangle. Now we are doing it all at once on the mobile phone. And this is definitely going to help us get access even to correspondent banking funds. So the convergence of technology, data, cloud computing, machine learning, and creating all this behind transactional capability in a bank is really enabling us to then serve small, medium enterprises with credit beyond their expectation, because then we are able to use algorithms to credit score them and basically serve credit like a buffet is served in a restaurant. You just go and choose what you want to take yourself, partake of yourself, and that is the way to go. And COVID-19 has certainly helped because policymakers, governments, everybody has truly accepted that digital cash is the way to go. The only challenge was digital cash was attracting very high transactional costs, which were extractive. Now with innovation of tech where you can move from bank wallet to mobile phone wallet and vice versa without costs, that makes digital cash as efficient as real cash. And that is what we are seeing developing, especially in a market like Kenya. And thank you very much for that question. Thank you.
Je vous remercie pour votre réponse très complète sur cette question.
Many thanks for this very complete reply to this question. We have 1 minute left. I will ask one last question. It's not an easy one. It's a fundamental and very interesting question. And I will leave Mr. Dabira or Mr. Sigwart, whoever wants to reply first will have 30 seconds to do so, which is what could the microinsurance role be, especially health insurance, in order to help accessing financing for the small and medium enterprises. It's a topic that was not broached, but yet it's a complementary aspect that can help financing for the micro entrepreneurs. Do one of you want to answer that question, which obviously will need more than 30 seconds? I think that the person who will be more able to answer this will be Mr. Dabira, because it's closer to the small and medium enterprises on the ground. Okay, Mr. Tabara is yours. Many thanks, Philippe. Well, okay, talking about the matter of formalization that I use. So I think that financing is a tool to enable the stakeholders in terms of social protection or in terms of microinsurance. The difficulty is to chop these questions here and there and to tackle them separately. When we ask somebody if they want to be a champion tomorrow, they will say yes. So therefore, if in their journey they need to have some balance sheet, they need to insure themselves, they need to insure their staff, and they know that they will then get access to financing or public markets, then they'll go for it. So the pedagogical elements for these small and medium enterprises is very important for them to access these mechanisms, and the partners can set up some incitation elements in order to support this, to get the enterprises to grow, especially by getting more formal or by accessing some mechanisms that will enable them to reduce the risk and the risk for their staff with microinsurance and things of that nature. So I think that these two elements are linked. Many thanks. Many thanks. And on these wise words, we will conclude our panel that took a little bit longer than planned. But yet it was absolutely fantastic to hear all your interventions. And I hope that this has presented a lot of information to all of those who have followed our panel. So I wish you a very good end of the day, and I'll speak to you very soon. Many thanks. Bye-bye. Many thanks. Many thanks. Many thanks to you all. Many thanks, Olivier Doubleman, and all our panelists, Polycarp Digade, Commercial Director of Equity Bank Holdings, Eliane Moudekene, Vice President of DRC, Philippe Seguard, CEO of the Baobab Resources in France, and Idrissa Dabira, CEO of ADMP in Senegal. Many thanks to you, Olivier Edelman, for moderating that session on the financing of micro, small, and medium enterprises with the new banking with risk and opportunities. So we're late on our program for the day, and it's now time to have a small break for lunch, a small break in order to exchange amongst yourselves and network. So we will then have the next session at 1400 hours GMT in about 30 minutes. That break is shorter than planned, but yet we should manage to get through it. And I will just state for all those who have asked me through the questions on the platform that you have to know that all the support, presentations, and so forth, and PowerPoints that were given and presented today and that will be presented for the rest of the event will be available for a few days after the event on the virtual platform, where you will get access for 1 week, and the sessions and recordings will be available too. And you will be able to view that through the site for the European Investment Bank Academy. We'll meet up again in 30 minutes. Many thanks. See you soon. Many thanks. Bye-bye.